And we are live, or at least we should be. Welcome, everyone. There isn't anyone here, I know, so we're going to give people time to show up, and hopefully they do so in a second. And when they do, we will continue onward. John and I will start talking about Antifa, Marxism, and Socialism, and the difference between these things. But for the time being, let's see who else is here. And at this point in time, it is just me. Then again, it is Wednesday. It is hot. It is holiday. What do you think, John? Think anyone will show up at all?
Yeah.
Well, it is, as I said, it is hot. It is holiday. There is all these things. And I think everyone has heard enough about Antifa for now.
Well, it never gets old mocking them, though.
Well, true that. I don't understand that there are people out there that still think that they're the good guys.
It's called delusion.
I mean, they started 2 world wars, for fuck's sake.
Well,
or at least in my book. Why they're ludicrous.
Yeah, your book is a bit odd.
Well, that's true, though.
And you're still seeing bloody comments in the chat before me. Bloody annoying. You respond to a comment and it hasn't shown up for me.
Yeah, that's because it's my stream.
It is. It's your stream.
I don't know, I guess. I don't know why it is.
Nothing to do with me, Gov.
Nothing to do with me, Gov.
Yeah.
I did Jimmy Stiff Fingers. N-words. What N-words are we today?
Naggers.
Yeah. Naggers. No, I'm not a nagger.
So yesterday, and I must admit, I was a bit annoyed because the honey badgers in the news show covered a case of a woman in Britain who was arrested and taken to court for nagging, and the case was thrown straight out by the judge, but it still went to court, and it was. Oh, she says, all I did was leave him notes on the fridge saying, please do some vacuuming or something. Well, call me cynical, but I don't believe that the Crown Prosecution Service would have taken her to court for a few notes. I think she's being a little disingenuous.
Well, you know what? I think you could be right, John, but at the same time, someone got to court because he taught his pug to lift its left front paw. So, I mean...
Yeah. No, but what was really weird about this, okay, is that it was a woman taken to court after complaints by a man. That is what is unbelievable about it.
Yeah.
Because... the feminists have even complained that the controlling behaviour offence she was charged under is supposed to only protect the women from the men, even though we know that women are as guilty or more guilty of controlling behaviour than men are.
Oh, by the way, hi there, Muggeschichte, welcome back. I'm not sure if I ever was bigger. I might have had a few more subscribers, but this channel never was big.
He said he's bored, so he came back. Poor sod.
Yeah. Well, we're fun, aren't we?
Well, maybe, but we're going to be reading an article, or part of an article, about Marx from the International Socialist Review. So
I now have a girlfriend and hell. Welcome, mate. Hi there, Warped. But I understand what you're saying.
Chris, get your bloody phone out and watch us on your phone. Really, I don't know.
Why? Where are you going, Ludicrous?
He's hurt his back. I told you he was moving home. And he's lifted lots of boxes and he doesn't know how to do proper lifting.
Oh, okay.
What was their final mark?
What was their final mark on what?
Presumably the International Socialist Review on Marx. The conclusion is that Marx wasn't a Marxist.
Well, yeah, there is that, which is funny
Which
enough.
is what I've been saying for a long time.
True that. But that doesn't mean that Marxism isn't a real thing.
No,
it's just
but the point is, Marx didn't agree with most of what became Marxism, and this is not to defend Marx.
No.
It is not to defend Marxism. It is merely to point out that the two were different.
Well, Geschichte, Marx was a Marxist if you read his stuff. That's the one thing that people would contest. Marx wasn't a Marxist.
He even said he wasn't. He actually made a declaration.
Yeah. And he and Engels were asked to join several groups advocating for socialism and whatnot. And they were actually reluctant to join them. So that does kind of speak in favor of him. That's all that speaks in favor of him, in my humble opinion. But
well, as I say, this isn't a defense of Marxism. In fact, the purpose of this article is to give you the ammunition so that any time someone claims to be Marxism, you can actually say, oh, so your analysis is based on Marx, is it? Because it wasn't. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and funny enough, this is the main argument that... Yeah,
it's not communism was never tried. That's the wrong argument. The argument is that none of the Marxists understand the material they base their ideology on.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I was talking to an Antifa advocate not too long ago, and basically his argument was, I haven't read Marx, so I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, you're part of a group that wants to tell other people how to live their life, and you do so claiming you do it because of Marx. And I'm like, well, I can understand why you would do it under the nomer of what we say Marxism is, but it kind of goes against what Marx said.
So he was a woman. No, he's a German. I mean, come on, that's close.
He was a German. He was a Jewish German, actually.
Though his father converted to Lutheranism.
True that, yeah. But only for economical reasons. Sorry,
I can't pronounce your name. Mer. We just don't call you Mer. The whole point about the Quran is that it contradicts itself all over.
True.
And no one can understand it. So I think a comparison of Marx's writings and the holy books of Islam is very opposite.
Anyway, so
he was a German, full-blooded rabbinic Jew.
I don't understand.
Really, his father converted to Lutheranism.
Yeah, but again, he only converted to Lutheranism for economic reasons.
No, maybe, but that's not the point. The point is, you can't go not a bit German, full-blooded rabbinic Jew.
No, it depends on his mother. If his mother is Jewish, he's Jewish.
No, I'm not saying his father wasn't Jewish. I'm arguing about the sentence, not a German, full-blooded rabbinic Jew.
Anywho, it doesn't matter whether he's Jew or not. Funny enough. But what does matter is...
Well, ironically, in the history, it actually was highly influential because it shaped his life and pushed him down certain paths which he might not have taken otherwise.
Cool.
But it's less that he was Jewish than the Germans were, the Prussians, were anti-Semitic.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny that, considering the Germans were, this is later history, but it's kind of funny that the Germans were anti-Semitic, but in the period of the First World War, they allowed a lot of Jews into Germany to come as, how do you call them? Refugees. Which is, anyway, that's not for today. We're not talking about Judaism and Germany. We're talking about Marxism, Marx, and Antifa and socialism.
Well, we can see that half the audience seem to think that there's a direct correlation.
Well, I can understand that people see a correlation between socialism and Judaism, or Christianity for that matter.
Well, I think it's more of the conspiracy theory bollocks.
Why?
Because so many of the leading communists were Jewish.
Yeah, well, that's true too, but I mean,
and therefore,
a lot of
people like to disengage brain.
Yeah, but that would be unfair, because let's be honest, a lot of Jews weren't communist.
That's my point. That's why I said disengage brain.
But I understand why people then had problems with certain things. It's kind of like what we're seeing now with Islam. Not all Muslims are Sharia compliant, but you can't tell, therefore everyone hates all Muslims. It's unfair.
Who hates all Muslims?
Well, not everyone.
Stop saying that. That's what the twats on the other side say. It's not.
No, I know, but I'm merely pointing out that people are making arguments like this.
No, but the point is, in real life, very few people believe these stupid things. It's only trolls or idiots online who make comments like that.
Well, that's not really true, though, because if you look at the politicians, like Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, he kind of believes like that as well.
Well, I saw him speak. He didn't say anything about that.
I'm sorry?
When I saw him speak, he didn't say anything about that sort of thing.
Yeah, a few years ago, he still said stuff like that, but he stopped doing that because basically he got told not to do it, which is also wrong in my humble opinion, but But we get sidetracked. So, Wilders' relatives were killed by Islamic fundamentalists. I wouldn't know that, to be honest. That's the first time I heard of that. But let's go back to how Marx became a Marxist whilst not being a Marxist at all. Shall I share it? That people can see it.
Yeah, it's also in the description if anyone wants to look at it.
True that. But all right then. Here we go. Here we go. And yes, I have loads of windows open. I always do for some silly reason. Don't know why. Put it on broadcast. Broadcasting. Resistance and reaction in the time of Trump. Idiots. As if Trump is so important that he gets his own era.
Well, it's not just that, but it's like the Baltimore comments. And who else says the same thing? No one notices. As soon as Trump says it, I tell you, if Trump came out tomorrow and started talking about how the sky is blue, half the American population and much of the rest of Western Europe would suddenly insist it's not.
Yeah, true that. What was that joke about Trump coming out to talk about the beauties of air? Ooh, lovely oxygen. Don't you like oxygen? No! Marx was a wannabe revolutionary disliked by nationalist revolutionaries of his age for being a grumpy guy, doing nothing at all except being angry at seemingly everyone. You know what? Could be true. I don't know. Wasn't there at the time.
Sorry, where are you reading this from? You didn't start at the beginning.
Sorry. Marx was a wannabe revolutionary. This is something dropped in the chat.
Oh. I told you I don't see it until after you start reading it. So you can't.
And yes, ludicrous. It's even worse. Oh, sorry. Ludicrous said, if Trump cured cancer, the news agency would be condemning him for destroying all those charities. It would be even worse. He would be condemned for destroying
they've already
beautiful organisms.
No, they've already condemned him for promising to put more research into curing cancer.
Yeah, but that's unfair because Biden had promised it. And by saying, oh, you know what, I can do that too, he's taking away this thunder of...
No, he was attacked for such an unrealistic and unquantifiable promise.
Yeah.
Because the left never make vague and unquantifiable promises.
But it actually was Biden's promise. Biden said, if you elect me, I will eradicate cancer. Which is quite...
fake. Sorry.
Hi there, on your tuck. Anyway, can everyone see how Marx became a Marxist?
It's a bit small, probably. You might want to zoom in. Actually, if I'm going to be reading it, it might be better to share my screen.
As you wish. Go on then.
That means I'd have to find my brain. There. Yeah. I'm confused now. Because I've got the same bloody article up in both windows. And it's that one.
Okay. You broadcast it.
Okay.
Okay.
You're gonna...
I'll stop broadcasting. So actually...
Oh, for goodness sake. I apologize.
Davey, Marx became a Marxist. Is that like Jesus becoming a Christian?
No. In fact, I gave a good analogy for this earlier.
It would be more like Jesus becoming a Jesusian.
No. No, I gave a good analogy for this earlier. If you look at the New Testament, there are 4 Gospels, but there were a lot more books that were written about after he died. Okay? And most of those were actually influenced more by the thoughts of St. Paul. So Jesus could be said to not to be a Christian because no one knows if he would have agreed with what St. Paul decided, and on certain specifics he fundamentally disagreed. And so what we call Marxism is largely understood in terms of things that happened and were added after he died.
This is true. Though people will always say that it is based on Marxism. For example, fascism is based on Marxism.
Yeah, but the point is this: you can't blame the earlier strand of thought for the later strand of thought. You have to attack the later strand of thought. And the point is, as this article will... Are you going to share the... Oh, for fuck's sake, sorry, I apologize.
You're the one sharing.
No, not that. This stupid fucking computer! Sorry. Right, okay. So, yes. So, this is an article, and it's actually 2 articles. Oh, for fuck's sake. Sorry. It's 2 articles, because it said how Marx became a Marxist. What the article actually describes in 2 parts is, the first part describes his work and how he disagreed with what we understand to be Marxism. And that wasn't how Marx became a Marxist. That was why Marx wasn't a Marxist.
Yeah.
The other part of the article, which comes at the end, describes his history. And that describes how Marx came to be a revolution. Okay, so...
Okay. before we continue, may I respond to Mögeschichte?
If you like.
He was basically treated like that by state socialists and Soviet communists. And I'm 100% behind him when he says Karl Marx was treated or, how do you call it, pushed forward as a prophet of socialism and communism. But that doesn't automatically mean that he was in favor of it. And that's the fun thing. We call people Marxist based on the Communist Manifesto, but not based on what Marx himself agreed with.
No. People call themselves Marxists based on a set of dogmatic beliefs that were actually decried by Marx himself. So we will discuss this because that's what the article talks about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So.
Okay, Geschichte. Sorry, mate.
Okay. So, from the start, Marx died in 1883. That's just a point of reference. Okay. So, in 1882, just before Marx died, Friedrich Engels, Karl's longtime collaborator, close friend, and ally, wrote a letter to Edward Bernstein about the problems of the European socialists of the day. Engels recalled how Marx had told his son-in-law, Paul Lafargue, that he wasn't certain about many things, but if there was one thing he was certain of, it was that he was not a Marxist. So there he is. Just before he died, Marx repudiated the doctrine of Marxism. Yeah. If anyone ever asks you for a definition of the dialectic, that would be a good place to start. By saying he was not a Marxist, Marx meant something very particular. Even in his own day, many of his would-be followers articulated Marxism as a set of mechanical reductions of his ideas, organizing in very rigid and sectarian organizations, involved in what he called revolutionary phrase-mongering. Sound familiar? And building up a set of principles and ideas that were utterly hostile to the critical spirit of Marx's own Marxism, which rejected sectarianism, dogmatism, and reductionism. Sorry, I paused because that was quite a long thing. But basically, it's saying that Marx wasn't happy with the way people were interpreting his works.
Yeah, Marx basically he wasn't a totalitarian. And
yeah. We will get to that because that's all covered in here. So Marx once wrote that his favourite motto was "Doubt everything," and it was a dictum he applied not only to the ruling ideas of his age, but something that he applied to other socialist currents and even his own ideas, which might be why you thought he contradicted himself, because he kept changing his mind, because he kept reanalyzing it. And that is actually a fundamental part of the principle.
Well, that's not the main reason, but people, it's the same problem that you see within Islam, that people use abrogated texts. Yesterday it was this, but tomorrow it's that. And this is true for what Marx did as well. But Marx himself saw it as a continuously changing reality, where the people who use Marx see it as an explanation of why this is how it is. So in Marx's case, it wasn't him talking about contradictions, it was him talking about new recognitions, recognizing change. But a lot of people later started using this as explanations of why boom, boom, boom. Understand what I
mean? Due to the pagination, I actually stopped halfway through a sentence because I didn't notice it was a comma. Anyway, yes. So Marx would criticize his own ideas, which he was constantly questioning, revising, and developing in light of historical circumstances and conditions. And that is the important point, that much of what we understand as Marxism, that is the things to do were merely specific conclusions at a specific time, not foundations of the belief system itself. Marx consistently rejected any politics based on hero worship and the subjugation of any movement to a saviour or God. And he rejected that role for himself as well. Well, I would hope so, given the previous, what's the word, bit of the sentence. Clause of the sentence.
But funny enough, this is the problem with, for example, groups like Antifa or anyone claiming himself to be a Marxist. They do see him as, an ideological leader.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't. Oh, wait, sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. Marx is often criticised for lacking a concrete programme, a blueprint for how a future socialist society should be organised. But he rejected such a blueprint very consciously for political reasons. Marx considered it anti-democratic for one person or a small group of people to draw up a blueprint of a future socialist society, because he understood that such a future society would only be brought about by an independent movement of the immense majority, in the interest of the immense majority, as he put it. And in making that revolution, in transforming capitalism and achieving socialism, they would create possibilities and develop new ideas about how society ought to be run. In other words, you can't predict what's going to happen because only the people there at the time will know what's best to do, is in short. So you can't be too prescriptive up front. And there's all this thing about state ownership and central government is fundamentally flawed, because that might not be what people at a given place and time think is the best way to do things.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I mean, he was just saying you cannot be prescriptive. He can't write out how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But how it should be is exactly what people have taken from his works.
Well, what I find even more interesting is that you can now see why the Bolshevik called themselves Bolshevik.
Yeah.
Because Marx quite clearly said no group should push it on top of others unless it's a really large part of society. An immense majority. Not a majority, an immense majority. Now, there hasn't been any society ever where there was an immense majority of anything.
No, and it becomes less so as time goes by.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because if I read, especially this small bit, and I did say this to John earlier, not today, but I think yesterday. If you read this small bit, what you can read is that capitalism has reached more socialistic goals than socialism.
No, but that actually is the entire point, because
But
if you look at 1848, Marx was writing in the Communist Manifesto 2 conditions of 1848. However, we aren't in 1848. We are 170 years later. And 170 years later, not only did many, many things that Marx predicted not come true, but many of the goals underlying the whole enterprise have been achieved. And it is the failure to recognize the achievement of those which pisses me off so much about the modern left. Because, it's like, if you want legal equality, which they had and now are destroying, but if you have legal equality, that's one of the objectives achieved. If everyone can participate in the political process, that's one of the objectives achieved.
Yeah. So this is what I find funny, because it seems that capitalism has achieved more for the socialism that comes from Marxism. But you could argue that what Marx was talking about was the emancipation of people. And to say that this is a precursor of socialism, well, it may be, but it's mostly the emancipation of people. And because of capitalism, we have seen a lot of emancipation in the Western world. And funny enough, the ones who are mostly against it are the people claiming that they are behind the works of Marx. Though, as John pointed out to me earlier, and I have to agree with him, it's not so much that these people stand behind what Marx say, they stand behind the concept of Bolshevism. And Bolshevism is trying to push through certain things based on what Marx said, because they claim they are the immense majority. And because of that, they feel that they have the right to tell other people how to live, which Marx kind of said, no, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, but that is, in a way, one of the inherent flaws at the heart of the whole political philosophy, that the political philosophy is based on the fact that everyone gets to participate in decision making, which means that you cannot possibly make any decisions in advance. So then what you have to basically very, very simple, broad concepts like the right of everybody to participate. And as I say, we've got that. Yay, success. Let's all go home. No, seriously. Oh, yeah. Seriously, and it's like, so back to the article. He saw radical democracy as being at the heart of a socialist transformation. So those self-identified Marxists who had built, or those who continue to build, sects, cults of personality, and even gulags in the name of Karl Marx don't understand the first thing about Marxism. And if one sentence is what you should take home from this article, it is that one. Because that is the point of reading out to you, to say, when someone says they're a Marxist and they believe in what Marx believes, you can turn around and say, no, you fucking well don't.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to do that. So those self-identified Marxists, like Antifa, who attack people for not having the right ideas, are not Marxists. Because Marx hated the concept, well, apparently, of totalitarianism and telling other people how to think, do, or act. Which is interesting if you then look at groups like Antifa or socialistic states. But I have to admit, socialism in itself is older than Marx.
Mm-hmm. It does actually point that out further down.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't... Okay. According to Misguided, Antifa are often Trotskyists.
No, they're not.
I don't think so either, Misguided. Can you explain that? Because they seem to me...
They're anarchists.
Bolsheviks. No, I wouldn't even say anarchists.
No. A lot of them self-identify as anarchists.
They call themselves anarchists, but they don't stand for anarchy. Because they do want a certain ideological leadership. I mean, they are Bolsheviks in merely everything. So I'm curious how you think them as Trotskyites.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the Trotskyism that I knew decades ago is essentially identified by the attitudes that Marx said that you can't actually prescribe what's going to happen because everyone gets to take part, and therefore and you have to constantly revise it, and so any concepts such as we're going to do this are bullshit.
So how do you island monkey say it? Bite the table in Germany, as in very frustrated, annoyed beyond recognition. I'm not quite sure what you mean now, Michael.
I think he's calling me an island monkey. And oh no, Davey is calling an island monkey.
All right.
I don't know. Do we have a suit? There are some, but my brain's gone blank. Okay, so then there's a whole bunch of stuff about the Communist Manifesto. What on it? It's a bit boring. However, okay. Well, we could go back to it if anyone's actually bothered. I'm sure they're not, and they can look.
No, I actually like the first line in the Communist Manifesto. Marx and Engels railed against the sectarianism.
Yeah. But basically, a lot of it was bigging themselves up. We're the good guys.
Yeah. Well, Marx and Engels railed against the sectarianism of so many socialists of their day. And this is how they put it at the beginning of the manifesto. In what relation do the communists stand to the proletariat as a whole? And that one question is something I always found interesting. Because in what relation did the Bolsheviks stand to the proletarians as a whole? Because if we looked at Italy and if we looked at Germany, Weimar Republic Germany, the Bolsheviks attacked the working class because they didn't think in the same way that they did, which in themselves made them sectarians again. And so the question remains, in what relations do the communists stand to the proletariats as a whole? Hi there, Ronavasio. What did I miss, you literal Hitlers?
We're so literal Hitler. We're reading from what's that? International Socialist Review.
Yeah,
because that's what the alt-right do. They read communist articles.
How Marx became a Marxist, and then basically they explain how Marx called himself anything but a Marxist, and how he was actually not in favor of what people would call Marxism. There is that.
I will just read this one line from the Communist Manifesto, what they said in the Communist Manifesto, which is, the theoretical conclusions of the communists are in no way based on ideas or principles that have been invented or discovered by this or that would-be universal reformer.
Yeah.
In other words, they were trying to say it wasn't something they just dreamt up and was unique. It was just supposed to be a collation of general attitudes at the time. Well, as I'm not versed in mid-19th century socialist thought, I will just have to take their word on that.
Yeah. And yeah, it's basically what they're saying is that people who calling themselves communists do so based on something other than anything invented or discovered, but more by something, or this is how I read it, by more than something that is, how do you call this, imposed? I think imposed is the best word I can come up. So the theoretical conclusions of communism are in no way based on ideas or principles that have been invented or discovered. They are imposed on people. Which kind of, I mean, if you tell people long enough that this is the best way to go, eventually they'll listen, I guess.
Okay, so then this is the next part, which is really interesting, because essentially utterly contradicts actually everything anyone you would generally find to call themselves a Marxist or a communist would believe.
This is actually a good article, I have to admit. Funny enough, I think it's a good article, not quite because it's so good, but because it shows how bad
stupid most Marxists are.
Yeah.
Which, and what the thing is I've come to a lot of these same conclusions just by, paying attention to what was written and then looking at what people interpret it as and go, they're the opposite.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because not too long ago, someone I was having an internet discussion with, which was an Antifa proponent, and for the longest time we were going back and forth, and all of a sudden it was like, ha, you've never read Marx, therefore you're wrong. And I'm like, okay, but this is what he said. And then I got obviously blocked.
Yeah.
Because that's
of course. Because they only read the cliff notes, if that.
If that at all.
Okay, so socialism from below. This is the other important aspect of the difference between what Marx was advocating and what all the communists seem to think should be, because obviously by the whole bullshit. Well, you see, Mark Twain's saying, "Oh well, the Bolsheviks will call the Bolsheviks to be the majority," but Lenin himself was pushed the notion of the vanguard, the revolutionary vanguard.
Yeah,
that is an elite.
Which is also kind of not what Marx said. But
okay. Which is the opposite of what Marx was saying, because we've already said it's not about personalities, it's not about leaders, it's about the mass of people. And it's the difference between socialism as imposed by those who know what they're doing, the elite, or socialism from below. So Marx and Engels made a point of distinguishing their view of socialism and socialist organization from that of other, largely émigré socialist groups that existed at the time they were writing the manifesto. In 1847, Marx and Engels were formally invited to join the League of the Just, an organization of German émigré workers with members in several countries. But they agreed to join this group only on certain conditions. The first condition was that the League of the Just engaged in public, open, democratic forms of struggle, that it ceased being an underground organization using broadly conspiratorial means of organizing. Sound like Antifa, anyone? And that it publicly and openly proclaimed its means and goals. They also proposed changing the organization's name from the League of the Just to the Communist League. They argue for public, democratic and open forms of organizing rather than the model of struggle that most socialists before Marx and Engels' time relied upon, which was that of a small minority acting in the interest of and on behalf of the working class or other oppressed classes. Antifa.
Yeah.
As Marx put it some years later, in the founding rules of the First International Working Men's Association, which they helped found in 1864, the emancipation of the working class must be the act of the working class itself. Workers must emancipate themselves. They cannot be emancipated by some other social agent. And what we have learned is they don't want to.
Yeah, and here this is what I want to say. At this point in time, we will see that most of the working class, not just the working class, is still not really emancipated because they're happy where they are. This is kind of funny because look at how many people are unhappy with the politics we have, but they're unwilling to stand up against it because, meh. So in a way, they're still not emancipated, even though they have equal rights and whatnot.
Yeah, but the point is you've got to be to believe in the ideology. You've got to accept that people have to be free to decide for themselves. They can't have some overeducated, underemployed twat telling them that that when they hit them over the head with a bike clock, it's for their own good.
Yeah, and this is kind of why you can't have professors telling children that this is what they should do, because by doing so, they are telling them what to do. It's still not emancipation.
No, it's just bondage in a different form.
Yeah.
Or worse form.
And this is, and I have to admit that I was wrong when I said this, and John was right when he said I was wrong. Write it down. This will never happen again. But I did say that when Marx wrote this, basically he wrote a manifesto to create a new elite. But in fairness, Marx didn't write it to create a new elite, but people abused what he wrote to create a new elite. So this is how they are abusing his writing. Now, I still say that the Communist Manifesto and Marxists are using the ideology, the ideas, to create a new elite. But this is not what Marx wanted.
No, but I mean, the Communist Manifesto contains a lot of bad ideas. And having put those bad ideas there, we can't be surprised how it turned out.
Mm-hmm.
This is why, as I say, this is not in any way a defense of Marx, because he was still an idiot. But the point is that he's just a different kind of idiot than most people think he was.
Yeah. I mean, he was still not smart, but the way people abuse his ideas. I mean, Marxism is just about completely the opposite of what Marx wrote down. Now, we still call it Marxism because, yeah, got to give it a name, I guess.
Well, no, because I think the fundamental problem is this. Marx did a lot of writing, some of which may not have been the easiest read.
Yeah.
And so what do people do when they don't want to read, especially when you're a lazy leftist, which most of them are, let's be honest. You skip to the end and you just read the conclusion. But if the conclusion was actually the conclusion to a specific line of reasoning based on a specific social conditions and circumstances, then you understand that if you change the conditions and the circumstances, as we've already seen, Marx did himself, he kept reanalyzing it because it was supposed to be a dynamic ideology, that you start with your goals, and as the world changes, you constantly have to adjust and adapt to the changing situation. But no, why bother with all that hard work when you can just read these bullet points? Government ownership of everything, and no private property, and and it's like, yes, those were really stupid ideas, but they weren't the point. They were the conclusion, not the goal. Anyway, I don't want to be defending Marxism.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because often when people start spouting certain things, we have to be able to point out how they're wrong. It's kind of like I sometimes have the feeling I have to defend the Nazis, not because I agree with the Nazis, but because the stupidity of what they're pushing out there, and try to make it sound like, oh no, but this is how it was. No, it wasn't. Doesn't mean that the Nazis weren't bad. Doesn't mean that Marxists aren't idiots, but it's not these idiots.
Yes, exactly. You have to be able to criticize people for what they said, not what other people claim they said. You then criticize those other people for being idiots, but that's a separate argument. You get two lots of mocking people.
Yeah.
So I shared with Modwayne a video on Antifa, and it was horrendously pro-Antifa. And somebody wrote a comment, oh, Hitler didn't like socialism. He hated the National Socialists, which is odd because I found a source which states that he actually insisted on adding the National Socialists to the name of the German Workers' Party before he would join it. So it was actually his own idea that they would call National Socialists.
Yep.
And yet people will now go, oh, but Hitler hated socialism. No, he hated communism. That is not the same thing. But
he hated Bolshevism. I wouldn't say communism.
No. But it was called communism in Germany at that time. It's what they would generically call communism.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this idea of self-emancipation embodies Marx and Engels' decisive break with previous forms of socialism, and continues to distinguish them from countless other socialists and self-proclaimed Marxists to this day. As Hal Draper, the author of Karl Marx's Theory of Revolution, explained, writing of the socialists who predated Marx, without any exception then known, these first socialist ideologists were proponents of a socialism from above, Marx was the first figure to come to an acceptance of the socialist idea through the battle for the consistent extension of democratic control from below.
Yeah.
Which is still, let's be honest, an utterly alien concept in the vast majority of politics.
Yeah, but this is kind of funny because this is one of the things that was different at the start of fascism, but changed pretty fast after it, because fascism was a grassroots movement until it became political, and then they removed the grassroots part of it. The same is true for the NSDAP in Germany. It was a grassroots movement. It was people standing up. But after a while, the politicians took over. Hitler was one of the politicians who took over in the NSDAP. So these movements started out from below, but once it reached a certain momentum, politicians took over and they stopped being from below.
Mm. Well, it is an inherent aspect of our current political system that they are top down.
Yeah. It's funny that certain groups will turn top down so fast.
Well, it's because people like to be the vanguard. They like to be the few who see the secret.
Yeah.
Not understanding that the fact that they have a unique view disables them from being a suitable person.
That's what I always say. Those who want to be leaders shouldn't. Anyway, I'll be right back because I need a fast bio break. I can leave them in your capable hands, my friend.
Good luck. Right. Draper calls these two poles, socialism from above and socialism from below, the two souls of socialism. He shows how throughout the history of the socialist movement, there have been competing ideas based on whether one has a commitment to socialism from above or below. As opposed to the many forms of socialism from above, Marx's commitment was to the struggle in which the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. In other words, basically freedom, which is very ironic given that Marxists are not known for being proponents of freedom, but there you go. And that there was no other road to socialism. This is the sense in which International Socialist Review today calls itself socialist, and in which we're trying to bring these ideas to the concrete, real struggles of our time. The point of Marxism is to be practical, revolutionary, and engaged in struggle. Blah, blah, blah. The image we so often see of Marx as someone who fundamentally operated in the world of ideas, someone cut off from society and isolated from struggle, reading books, documents, and treatises, completely misses how Marx became a Marxist. Blah, blah, blah. Don't say a lot of that paragraph. Apologies. Marxism has nothing to do with the academic and intellectual theorists today who identify with Marxism, but those whose ideas are completely divorced from struggle, which is the vast majority of them, let's be honest. In his ideas, Theses on Feuerbach, written in 1845, Marx put it very clearly. Philosophers have hitherto interpreted the world. The point is to change it. This, in its most distilled form, is the idea that Marx struggled toward in his early life and represents one of the decisive moments in his thinking. This doesn't mean that Marx rejected ideas, that he rejected theorization, or that he was anti-intellectual. He spent a lifetime trying to clarify his ideas, to elucidate the ideas of the socialist movement, blah, blah. Anyway, Marx also understood that this intellectual work, the theorizing of his own ideas, was historically conditioned and historically shaped. Therefore, as Michael Lowry, German speakers, I don't know on Marx, argues in The Theory of Revolution in the Young Marx, we need to apply Marxism to Marx himself, to look at how Marx developed his own system of thinking, his own ideas and practice. The reality is that Karl Marx was not born a Marxist or a revolutionary, and no one in history was born a revolutionary. Every one of us, blah, blah, blah. As Marx and Engels write in the manifesto, the ruling ideas of each age have ever been the ideas of its ruling class. The working class and oppressed groups in society have little access to the means of communication and don't have control over the education system, the churches, or the other major institutions that disseminate ideas. The ideas that dominate, the ideas that we're bombarded with over and over again, are the ideas of the ruling class. And this, again, is something that has now changed.
Yes, because here they say in Marx's time and in our time as well, but it's not true in our time, not at all.
No.
In our time, we are bombarded by the elite, but not by the ruling classes. The ruling classes kind of...
No, but equally, there are forums for the non-elites to fight back now in ways that were not possible in the past.
True that, which is kind of the emancipation of the worker.
Yeah.
So when it says in Marx's time and in our time as well, it's the and in our time as well part
that we don't agree.
Yeah, I can't help but disagree a lot.
Yeah, because, I mean, if nothing else, even were it true, and to an extent there was a formalized strata system in many countries in Europe at the time, you can no longer say that. The hereditary landed aristocracy, or its the relics of it, the mercantile elite, the billionaires and whatever, and various other groups, don't have a singular interest anymore. They are actually, to a degree, in competition. So you cannot say, as it implies here, the ideas of the ruling class, because that would imply that there is a singular homogeneous ruling class with singular homogeneous ideas, and I don't believe that is any longer the case.
Yeah. And let's be honest, if we look at, it's a great example, if we look at Antifa, within Antifa, they all stand for the same thing, but no true Antifa groups 100% agree with one another. They will agree with their leaders, and if their leader says, no, this is what we think, they will go along with it. But most Antifa, you can't speak to a one-on-one person of Antifa because he doesn't know what he stands for.
Yeah, sorry, I was just agreeing. Well, I agree, yes.
Yeah, you agree. You didn't say anything, but you agree.
Sorry.
And Davey would go full Borat, though.
Yeah, I was just commenting on that.
But isn't full Borat something else than a mankini?
No, it's not.
Oh.
He's saying I'd go full Borat, though. Mankini and sunglasses. That's what he's saying full Borat is.
Okay. I'll buy you a beer when you go full Borat into a grocery store in a family-friendly town and buying some sausages and paying with small change to get out of the front part of the man. That's just...
Uncle Kelly, you're sick. I'm not sure we want such sick individuals.
That's just sick.
Watching this stream, I say that we want anyone who's daft enough to watch this stream.
But still sick.
Absolutely. Not that there's anything wrong with being sick. It's just we do like to point it out. So that's the part of the article I found of interest.
Yeah.
It got less interesting at the end. But the main gist is that if you meet anyone claiming to be a Marxist, you can tell them on strong evidence that they don't have the first idea what Marx even believed. So how on earth can their beliefs be based on Marxism?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is kind of funny. But this is the one thing that I found really interesting when we talked about this earlier, and when we talk about whether people are Marxists or not, and whether Antifa or socialists on average are Marxists. They claim to stand behind the idea of Marx, but They can't.
No.
It contradicts literally everything they stand for.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have to admit, I like the way you read, my friend. You are really good at this.
Okay.
No, I mean it. I'm not being sarcastic.
I know. I didn't think you were. Okay, thank you.
And
you're just making me feel guilty for not pursuing something I promised to do, but never mind.
Well, yeah, you should talk to. Yeah.
My problem is I need to buy a microphone, and what I really need is someone to just buy it, and I'll give them the money, because I'm me and decisions. Okay. I don't do decisions. I'm rubbish at them.
Now I'm lost. Come on, tell us.
What do you mean?
Well, you talk to you. They should decide, and you give them the money. What do you mean?
Well, anybody, somebody, a person in the world should just say, "Here's a microphone. We bought it for you. Give us the money, and I'll give them the money."
Oh, right. You just want someone to send you a microphone.
Well, no, I want someone to decide. It's a decision that I can't do.
But you have a microphone, don't you?
Yes, but to do the work I need to do, I need a proper one that doesn't sound like I'm, as Real Raven called it, in a phone box recording.
Oh. I thought it sounded pretty good, actually. Well, okay, I'll see what I can conjure up.
Well, Real Raven did recommend some, but they were all German, and they didn't come in nice kits with stands and thingies. And as I said, me and decisions, I am not good with decisions.
Well,
I'll walk around my huge local supermarket and not come home with any food because I can't decide what I want to eat.
Yeah,
that's bad. That's how bad I am.
I'll come home with food. I'll just buy a pack of crisps.
No. Well, I buy chocolate and ice cream and strawberries.
See?
The essentials.
The essentials. Now, he's made it as a lawyer. He's more concerned with avoiding tax, but refuses to discuss that as well. A socialist hypocrite. Imagine my shock. A former friend. Okay, former best friend was a self-declared Marxist socialist. He refused to discuss socialism, had no idea about basic socialist economic theory, but loved to declare himself for the people. And now he made himself a lawyer. He's more concerned with avoiding tax, but refuses to discuss that as well. So, yeah, he's not a socialist. He's a virtue signaler. I think that's the best description we can give him, Renovatio.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you notice about all the Marxists in universities is how much they push to be paid.
Well, yeah.
You know, it's funny that it's like.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, it's like yeah, we have to get rid of private property, but don't touch mine. No, not mine. That's their attitude.
That's the one thing that I find so funny. It's that capitalism has done more for socialism, to promote socialism, funny enough, than anything else. I mean, let's be honest. Look at groups like Antifa. They're all wealthy middle classes. And if they're not all wealthy middle classes, well, they're 99% white.
Yeah.
Hi there, Mycroft. You missed a good bit, mate.
Yeah. Funny enough, I was thinking of you in relation to this particular piece because it explains why I'm not a commie.
Yeah. Well, it also explains why communists are not Marxists.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hate to do this, guys. I mean, we did have a good talk. We did.
Yeah, but he did say before we started that he wanted a short one today.
Yeah, I have to have a short one. I have to wake up tomorrow at 7, which is, let's say, 6 hours from now, because my kid needs to go to hospital for a checkup. Nothing too worrisome, but still it has to happen. And I am a little bit tired. For example, let's look at Corbyn, because Corbyn puts himself out there as if he were a socialist. Considering how rich he is, he's kind of the same sort of socialist that Bernie Sanders is.
Yeah. Champagne.
Yeah. A campaign socialist.
Champagne, not champagne.
Sorry.
Champagne.
How do you call it? Coffee table.
No. Champagne socialist. It is a well-recognized term.
True that.
Elite.
They're rich. I mean,
The elite wealthy people in metropolitan centres who advocate socialism just as they advocate immigration.
Yeah.
That is, as long as it's no trouble to themselves.
Yeah, not in my back door. Which is weird, because you'd think that if they were really that in favor of it, they would actually stand for what they believe. But they simply don't. And funny enough, Marx kind of did, but people forgot about that. Yes, not in my backyard, socialists. Thank you, Davey. Anyway, yeah, you should rewatch it, Minecraft. It's really... This was a good stream. It's short. It's only about an hour. And I'm sorry, guys. We could talk about this for a lot longer. But
well, I mean, we basically there are a few nuggets in there which are significant because they're actually written by something called International Socialist Review. That is, these aren't our words. We're not claiming this. This is what they are saying. And that's what's significant about it.
Yeah, don't you love it when they give the arguments against themselves?
Well, no, because the point is that, as I keep saying, most of the left isn't left and hasn't been for a long time, and feminism is certainly not left-wing.
Yeah, they're more totalitarian. And one could argue that that isn't what the left is supposed to be, but they call themselves totalitarian from a left-wing perspective, I guess. Well, Antifa definitely is totalitarian. No way you can't see that it is not. But funny enough, they will tell you it's not.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all for coming. I am going to call it quits because I am going to go to bed, and I know. But I do appreciate everyone for coming. I am looking forward to any criticism people have. As always, I am more than willing to hear what people think and how they think we were wrong. Or
even better, send your comments to International Socialist Review, because it's their article.
Yeah, well, we did give a little bit of commentary here.
I'm joking.
Rather a bit. But yeah, and it's kind of funny because you just know that the whole story about how Marx became a Marxist, which is the headline, and then basically everything they say after that is how he wasn't a Marxist compared to what we now consider Marxists. So I'm kind of not, but this is something you see on the left constantly, misleading headlines.
Well, it's not just the left; it's just
Well, currently you see it on the left a lot.
Yeah, that's mostly because most of the media is left.
True. Oh, what was it? I mean, I think Tim Pool made a video about it, on how Vox were talking about how the president of America considered himself a first responder on 9/11, and they actually put in a clip with that tweet. And if you don't listen to that clip,
it contradicts.
They were there. I was there. I don't consider myself a first responder, but I was there. And I'm like, the dude actually literally says he wasn't, and therefore you claim he was. Cloud world.
Oh, just a quick thought. I went to the kebab shop last night, and they had a copy of the day before, Monday, Daily Mirror, and I flicked through it, and watch this space. Boris derangement syndrome is coming to the UK soon.
Yeah.
There was an article where it literally said, we don't have to believe a word Boris Johnson says because he's a congenital liar. That's a good start.
Yeah, well, it's already there.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I'm
people-
just saying. So to go with TDS, we'll have BDS.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, anything to protect globalism, I guess.
Well,
Because that's basically what they're all after. This is what I don't understand. I mean, this is what the Bolshevik were after. This is what Antifa is after. Now, Antifa seems to rail against corporations, but funny enough, they want the same thing that these corporations want: a global state, which will only make things easier for the corporations.
shame Stalin went off script then, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's the thing, he did went off script. That's why Lenin hated him so much. This is the big difference between Leninism and
No,
Stalinism.
Trotsky hated him.
Well,
It wasn't Lenin, it was Trotsky.
No, Lenin hated him too. Because even before Lenin died, you could already see Stalin making these moves.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's neither here
Just
nor-
a quick comment to Renovatio. They'll declare him a Jew next. I'm pretty sure that you'll probably find some Jewish blood in much of British high society,
Well, I mean, let's be honest.
because everyone's related to everyone else anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny that they had these DNA tests that could tell you how much percent of you where you came from, and then when you do those tests, you can see, okay, well, you have so much Europe and so much Africa and so much this and so much that. And I'm like, that means absolutely nothing, because everyone has so much this and that.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of them aren't very good. Carlos talks about this because he had his done through the Genome Project. The real deal.
Well, anywho, guys, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and maybe we should do a talk on Boris the Raymond syndrome pretty soon. Because
Well, we need to let it gather. I just thought I'd mention it so that when it happens in full-blown form, I could say, see, I told you.
But in all fairness, I think it already happened.
I know, but I haven't heard many people calling it BDS, and I want to stick that term out there.
Right. Okay. Noted. I'd like to thank everyone for coming.
Yes, thank you all.
Like the faced Pocahontas. Yeah, that's Pocahontas look. Yeah. That's like that. He had BDS a long time now. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'm very curious. I'll see what I can find about that. But I am going to press broadcast ending, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you all next time. Saturday, John and I will have some interesting topic. Maybe we'll do Saturday,
or we won't.
Or we will just talk about where we would want to live again.
No. You can talk where you want to live, or in what kind of house. Or
Yeah, because you don't want to move.
I don't want to move.
or what's for dinner? Talk about something completely innocuous. What's for
my
dinner?
giddy aunt. No. Please. No.
Not chocolate ice cream with.
No. Do remember tonight, in honor of the stream, I had red Leicester sandwiches.
Anyway, we're starting all over again. I'm really bad at closing down, aren't I? How to kill a
lively party?
Lively. I know.
I don't go to parties. I don't like them.
Yeah,
As you may not be surprised to hear.
No.
People.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
Anyway, before we start all over again, thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you all next time. And this is where I push the button.